when you're going through a hard time, the hard times is what defines you. I always say
today we're going to talk about leadership with a special guest that has built a massive company and is a great man of faith. Welcome to the Grow Time Biz Devo, where we explore God's principles for living a high-performance life. And today is a special day because for the longest time in the history of the Biz Devo, I haven't had any guests on. And I've thought a lot about how to have guests on a podcast that is really a devotional from business owners to business owners, right? And then as I was talking through it with one of my friends, I had the opportunity to have one of my really, really good friends on. And this is going to be the first of probably a lot of guests coming on the Business Devo. But this guy, his name is Jay Myers. He's a wonderful friend. He is an amazing encouragement in my life every time. And I don't get to actually talk with him very much. He lives like thousands of miles away in the frozen tundra. And he's going to tell you about that. But he's built an amazing, amazing company. He founded a company called Bold. They're Bold Apps, and they were one of the first Shopify app developers on the entire platform. I would say one of the biggest ones. He's built this company with his partners, I know, over the last, Jay, would it be 10 or 15 years now, I guess?
Mm-hmm.
And Jay's had up to 400 or more employees at any given time, multiple locations. He's super humble. He's super successful. It hasn't always been that way. And he's a great leader. And so today, I want to welcome my good friend, Jay Myers, to the Biz Devo. Jay, welcome.
Wow, Ken. I don't know what to say after that, man. You honor me. I'm humbled. As someone who has listened to your show, I actually can't believe you're letting me be the first guest. I hope I don't screw it up for you.
My man, there's no way you can't, because listen, every time, and I've said this to you, not recording, right? And I've been honored to be on your podcast a couple of times. But literally every single time that we've gotten together over the last 10, 15 years, and it hasn't been many. Like we get to see each other at like a conference or something like that. And we hang out for a few minutes, or we get on the phone, or we trade some emails, or we do a podcast episode. But every single time I've left like incredibly encouraged and genuinely inspired for two reasons. One, you've done some awesome things that, sometimes people, this is not our people. The people that listen to this are not, but a lot of people get intimidated by success and maybe even feel like they're lesser than because of someone else's success. But that's not our people. Our people and myself, every time I see great success, I'm inspired by it. Like I want to be someone who is in the room with people that are greater than me, not in the room with people that are less than me, because that's how I grow and get inspired. And that's our people. And that's one of the amazing things of what you do is you've created so many great things, and you do it in a really humble way. And the second thing I want to say is you're incredibly encouraging. Like every single time I've talked with you, you probably don't even realize it, but you've just said certain things, and you probably just do this throughout life. You've just been super encouraging. And here's the thing, guys, like Jay's going to tell us about his story. We're going to go into his story, his leadership journey, more about this company that he's built. But Bold can you tell us a little bit about Bold just for context? Like it's a really big company, it's incredibly influential. And I'll just let you tell it.
Yeah, man. Sometimes I do kind of take a step back and, pinch myself or whatever you want to call it what was an idea. We at one point hit, I think it was around 450 people. We're a little bit smaller now. We've downsized a little bit, like every tech company has in the last couple of years. But you're right. We launched in 2012. So I guess that we're close to 12 years now. This April will be 12 years. And we've had over 800,000 Shopify stores use our apps.
That is awesome.
When we first launched, I think that Shopify announced they had just crossed 20,000 merchants on the platform. And today they list over 4 million. And there was roughly 40 apps in the App Store. So the landscape has changed dramatically. But yeah, it's, I don't know, everyone measures success differently. But when someone says, tell me about the success of Bold, my mind goes to, I know that we've had 4 people who have met at Bold that have got married. I know that dozens of people that have decided to buy a house, have a baby. We've had about 40 people move to Canada because we used to do a lot of international hiring from Brazil, from France, from from Argentina. And I'll always remember people coming over. We talk about cold up in here in Canada. So, we had one time we hired 12 people from Argentina, and this was before people worked remotely. So they physically moved up here.
Yeah. Going from Argentina to Winnipeg
we met them at the airport with their wife and their kids. And we put a winter parka on them. And some of them came in January and February, but then I just kind of slapped myself for a second. I go, man, these people are relocating their life to come and work at this company. And it's this incredible feeling of gratitude. And yeah, it's hard to even put into words, but to me, I feel like that's success, the lives it impacts. It's not, revenue numbers, and those are kind of scorecards in other areas. But to me, it's the number of lives impacted. So I'm yeah.
And straight marketplace success too. You've had, if anyone listening has ever had a Shopify store or done anything on Shopify, you've probably come across a Bold app. In my experience, that's usually the case. And that's really tremendous. And so I want to you just mentioned something that I would because I like to get into, I know you told me a little bit about the start of Bold and some of the challenges of the company prior. And maybe this and how Bold was born. But what I want to just touch on for a second is you just mentioned how people are coming over, right? And you feel this they're relocating their lives and they're building their lives on this thing that that you've begun to build. How do you deal with the responsibility of that? And because I think for some people, and I'll just say before you go, I've always met people who've been challenged with the responsibility of other people depending on them, and that's happened to me too. And then what I've thought was awesome about becoming really giving it over to God is I don't have to worry about that anymore. It's it's not my thing. But I'm curious, it's hard to live in that on a daily basis, just to be honest with you. So when you have people relocating their lives and coming over, just talk to me about that feeling.
Well, I think I would break it out into, you feel this financial responsibility. Yes, they've sold their house and they're starting from scratch here, if you want to call it that. And so you feel this kind of financial bit. But I think it's more so when we hired these people from other countries, we did it under this Canada had this program where you could bring them in and you had to kind of guarantee employment for 2 years. Often they would stay much longer with your company, but you had to kind of say you weren't just hiring them and going to let them go in a week kind of thing. So I would say probably about half of them are still with the company and half have moved on to some other company somewhere else. But I think, the responsibility that I feel is, we talked about this before. I remember one time, it's to show them, it's to welcome them, to show them love, to respect them, to embrace them. And ultimately, I have struggled with this. Like, it has been hard many times. Like, if we've had to like let someone go, if we've had to do layoffs, if we've had to like, you feel this incredible burden. But at the end of the day, I've seen so many people's lives grow into something much bigger because of a certain experience. And so I have to remove myself from feeling any sense of responsibility for their life. Like, God's responsible for their life. Like, I think, man, if I want to get into this a little bit, because I think over trying to help someone sometimes is actually hurting them. And so, like, a really good understanding that it's not our job to always fix everything, take care of everything, that there's a bigger plan at play. I think that's the big mistake that people make, is they try, like, I want to get ahead because I have a really, really good story about that. Like, Bold wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
Let's just say this: if there was multiple points in my life leading up to Bold, which I'd love to share, but Bold wouldn't have existed if certain friends in my life didn't let failure happen. If they would have come in and said, I can fix this, I can help this, here's some money, here's this, it would have, but they had the wisdom to let it happen.
Let
right.
it happen.
Yeah.
That's like a really hard thing. I've struggled with the balance of that before, because like when you lead anything, by nature, you're like you're someone who's willing to be the tip of the spear. Like you're willing to, like, you want to do something, and you also want the risk associated with it. And by the way, like, anyone listening, like, often say, like, that's whether you're leading like a company or even leading a family, it's like the same kind of thing. And it's a hard balance, because like on the one hand, there's like this responsibility, which is like to not be reckless. And I do think there's like a bit of a reckless thing that's happening in the marketplace. It's actually kind of, I think, slowing down. But for the longest time, like the move fast and break things, like philosophy, I actually think that that's not a great philosophy. I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs who'd use the excuse of being low discipline, like like it's like the entrepreneurial life, pivot, to actually create just massive amounts of destruction in their wake, right? With regard to like people and like people around them and their customers and all that kind of stuff. So like, there's definitely like that side of it, I think.
Yeah.
But then there's a side which is like, okay, when is it okay to let go of like the responsibility? And I always say, like, that is one of the great things. Like, for the longest time in my life, I would separate. I grew up a Christian. I grew up my dad was a pastor, but then like it really took a while to figure out. And for a long time, I was shunned out of that whole area because I had so much desire and ambition for things, which everyone thought was wrong. And I knew in my heart it wasn't, but then I figured out, like, no, that's not the case here. And we can get into all that in a second if we want to. But like once I got past it, I started to like separate things. Like, okay, there's like God stuff I might do over here, like my quote ministry, or like, what I might give back, and that might be money or time or whatever. And then there's like my business stuff, which has nothing to do with that. And that separation actually created, I think, a lot of pressure and anxiety that it wasn't necessary. Once I kind of brought the two together and realized, like, wait, one of the great benefits of following someone who's greater than you is, and believing that your life is on a mission, and you're pursuing a calling, or you've got something that you're supposed to be doing. Like one of the great benefits of that is like you can release all that to someone else, like someone greater. It doesn't take away the challenges of like you said, like laying off people sometimes, and even just or bringing people, having them move their lives to your company, or to what you're doing. But it definitely releases you in a way that I don't know. You tell me. You've led way more people than I have. Like, how do you possibly lead people and bring people onto something you're doing without being able to release that? Because a human being, I mean, how could you be responsible for these 450 people? It's not possible, right? You'd crumble to the ground in anxiety if you thought that was the case.
Yeah. I think it's critical to know that every step of their journey, like, God's not done with you yet. Like, you might think that you need Medicake to be extremely successful, but what you don't know is God's got so much more for you. And that's not a shot at all against Medicake. And I think that, like, I want Bold to be successful, but I know that God's building me and growing me every day. Every part of that journey is I'm enlarging my skill set. I'm enlarging my everything, like my patience, my strength, my leadership abilities, my marketplace abilities, my technical ability. Like, everything is growing. And if we think that, like, this thing, I have to win at it, that's kind of a finite way of thinking. And so when you remove that way of thinking, and you can know that, like, as long as I'm growing as a person, I'm doing what I need to do. And for me, it wasn't until I really realized that, and I realized it kind of the hard way through some very painful failure, but which I'd love to share a little bit, because I think that gives some context to all of this.
Let's talk about it.
But prior to Bold, so I started, I grew up in a family business. I was really competitive in archery when I was a kid. When I was 11 years old, I went to Bible camp, and archery. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you shoot now at all? Or,
I do, but, like, I haven't really done it competitively for a few years. When I had kids, I stopped. I'd love to actually get back into it with them again. But when I was 11 years old, I went to Bible camp, and I did archery, and I just loved it. I came home and I told my dad, I want to get a bow. And my dad, actually, we kind of laugh about this to this day, but he said, no, Jay, you're too young. My brother was 3 years old. He was like 14 at the time. He said, we'll get your brother a bow, though. So he bought my brother a bow, but then shortly after got me one too. And we used to go to the range and shoot all the time, and got really competitive into it. And then when I was 13, and I guess my brother was 16, my dad said, do you guys want to start an archery store? And we were like, of course we want to start an archery store. That'd be the coolest thing ever. So if you think about an archery store as kind of like a bowling alley, like, there's a pro shop and there's lanes, and people come and they can, there's leagues and there's lessons, but then there's also places where you can, like, tune your bow and do everything about that. And so I was really competitive. I ended up being, like, the Canadian national champion multiple years in a row. I was Archer of the Year. I was like went really far with it.
That is awesome.
And then in 1998, so this is quite early, I started selling the stuff online. And actually, it was sort of through a weird failure that I even started initially selling stuff online. So when my dad used to always tell me, inventory, for anyone listening, I know not everyone here is in business or retail, but I think this concept most people will get. Inventory on a shelf in a store is like locked up money. And, if you have something on the wall, like on a rack, and you have to pay for it in 30 days, it's money you can't access for 30 days until you sell it. And the goal with any retail store is to turn inventory over as many times as possible in a year, right? And so one time there was these bows, and I think they were like 20% off from the distributor. And so I ordered like 10 of them, and I put them on the wall, hung them up, and my dad walked by, and he was really kind of upset. And he's like, Jay, why do we have 10 of these bows? And I was like, well, they were 20% off. He's like, well, how many do we sell in a month? I was like, I don't know, 2 or 3. It's like, so that's locked up money that now I can't use to buy other inventory to turn those inventories. And I got it. And I got, I could tell, like, the pain, because, like, money was tight, and that meant that we couldn't have. So long story short, eBay had kind of was becoming a thing back in 1998. And I was like, well, I'll list them on eBay. And so I put one of the bows, I took a picture of it, put it up on eBay, and it actually sold for more money than we were selling it for in the store. It was like this crazy phenomenon. And we're like, whoa, that's interesting. let's list another one. And so we learned that there's this, I don't even call it retail arbitrage or location arbitrage, where, sometimes like you might live 2 hours away from a archery store, so you're willing to pay more than to drive. And at the time, manufacturers, like every manufacturer website you would go to would just have products like direct to consumer, like selling directly. Like you couldn't go to Nike and buy their shoes. Like today you can, but you couldn't. Correct. So I was able to sell these things on eBay, and we did quite well. And so then after a while of that doing well, my dad's dream was, I was 18 at the time. My dad's dream was always that I would take over the retail store. But it got to a point that these online sales were like doing almost as good as the store. And he's like, well, why don't you make this your business, And so I got a warehouse. It was a 2,000 square foot warehouse. And the website was National Archery Supply, and started this online business. Well, and the reason being, it's great making money on eBay, but at the end of the day, when you stop listing, you stop making money. So I was like, I want to build a brand, build a permanent thing.
Yeah, like an eBay store is not really a viable business or that can continue to scale.
Yeah, I always say there's a difference between owning a job and owning a business.
Oh, that's so good. Talk about the difference of that.
With eBay, I owned a great job. So I would say this is someone who is a hairdresser. If you're a single hairdresser, like you own a really good job, you own it, you're your own boss. But the day you stop cutting hair, you stop making money. And where a business potentially doesn't need you, you should be able to step away, leave, sell it, and it's not dependent on you. That is a business. And so with my eBay sales, the day I stopped listing things, I stopped making money. So I owned a really good job, but it wasn't a business. And so I wanted to build a business that could grow and could be more valuable than just me. And so I started building a brand, National Archery Supply, and it did well. I actually, within a couple of years, I got it doing $1 million a year in sales. And the thing was, I'm up in Canada, for those who don't know. I think you mentioned that in the beginning. I can't remember.
I did, but you're in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg,
so you're western, northwestern, or is it central?
Central, just above Minnesota, North Dakota, kind of right in the middle.
Right.
So 99% of our customers were in the US. So I was paying for everything to get shipped up to Canada, and then I would ship it back down to the US. And so there's a lot of extra cost in that. And it's like you pay duty and brokerage and customs and to get things up, and then your customers
shipping
in the US
right back down.
Yep. And then, but they would pay $25 shipping to me, versus Cabela's, they could pay $8 shipping, for example. And so I had to really I had to get to an economy of scale. So an economy of scale is where I always tell people, it's like if you own a hamburger stand and you sell hamburgers, you might sell the hamburger for $5. You don't make money on the first one because there's the cost to lease the little space that you're on, your permit, your all your supplies, and maybe you've got 2 people flipping hamburgers. But if it costs you $500 a day to run that hamburger stand, your first hamburger costs you $500. Your second one, $250. Your third one, $166. Is that right? I'm doing the math right. It goes down, down, down.
Right.
You don't make money until like hamburger number 85 or something like that. And so
which by the way, is the value of, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like for anyone listening, right? Because our audience are building businesses, they're like doing real things, right? So you've got this progression from working for someone else or trading time surely for money. Then you've got owning your own job, which is better than that, right? Because you've got more ability to price whatever you want, do whatever you want, but you still are required to be at the business, so you own your job. And then the third level, which is basically spending your time building a product that then, once it's done, obviously you have to optimize it and make it better over time. Once it's done, you spend most of your time selling it, and someone else and something else can do that over time. And so that's kind of and that's kind of where you get to here.
Yeah. And I got to a point similar like the hot dog stand. I was doing a lot of sales, but I wasn't making money yet. And I had, mainly because of the cost of overhead, the cost of shipping and duty, getting stuff back and forth. So I'm in Winnipeg, which is about 45 minutes from the border of the US. So I ended up even getting a little warehouse. It was actually a guy's garage in his backyard, but just across the border. But I would store things down there, and I had a truck and a trailer, and I would drive down twice a week to ship things down there. But still, Lincoln, it still costs more. I was burning through kind of like all the credit lines I had, and different suppliers give you different terms of credit and credit cards and everything. The company was growing, like each week it was doing more sales, but I had to get to a point where it was like, I don't know, it was like 70 orders a day, and then I would start making money. Because if I just sold one thing a day, if I have zero expenses, that's fine. But when you have all these other expenses, you have to get to a certain point. And so I ran that for a few years, growing it. But the story of it was I didn't get it to the point where it made money. And eventually I got to a point where I had maxed out like every credit card I had, every line of credit, all the terms with suppliers. They give you different like terms for buying stuff. And then when you get to a point where you start maxing out credit, and then you have a tough time getting inventory in, then you start slowing down on delivery. And so then what happens is someone will order something and it's not in stock, and you maybe can't order it from the supplier because you're waiting to pay for some bills that are due to them, but you can't do that until you sell more. So then the thing gets late to the customer, then they go and post something online like, don't order from them, they're a scam. And then other people see that, and then they panic, and then they've got an order, and then they go to their credit card company and they dispute the charge, which is called a chargeback. And it's kind of this vicious cycle. The more people dispute a chargeback, there's a certain threshold you can get where you lose your ability to process payments. And so that happened to me. I lost my merchant account. And so, I think it's like roughly like 1.5%. So like if you sell 100 orders, if 1.5, so if 2 people or more dispute the charge on their credit card, then you can lose the ability to process Visa and MasterCard and American Express. And so I lost my ability to process payments. And then I was like, oh my goodness. So I quickly signed up for another payment processor, got it going again. But that could only last a little bit. Then I ended up losing that one. And I fought so hard, like tooth and nail, to keep this thing going. I spent every last penny I had. I remember like going to my uncle one time and asking him to borrow money, because I'm like, I'm so close. It's like we're right here. And we talked about this earlier, but he had the ability to say, I don't think it's money you need. I think like I that might not be the best thing. That might extend it another 6 months. But similar thing with my dad. He saw that as well too. But in my eyes, my small eyes, I thought this was it. Like my purpose on life is to make this business succeed. I didn't have that bigger vision, that understanding that God wants you every step of the way to grow, right? Like I just saw like, this is it. And so I got to a point where I spent everything I could. And then I literally, I threw in the towel. I had to say like, I can't do this anymore. And I remember like telling my wife, and I was afraid. I came home one day and I just said, well, I don't know what else to do. I've gone through like 4 payment processors, every vendor, I've maxed out terms, and that's it. And she's like, well, how are we going to pay rent this month? I was like, I don't know. And she asked her dad to pay rent. We lived in an apartment, and he covered our rent that month. My parents covered our rent the next month. Like it was that. I actually remember, this $50 bill that I had, because I had borrowed, I don't know what it was, like $200 or something from my brother, for gas and for some other things. Like this is sounding really doom and gloom, but this is how it was. I was literally down to a $50 bill. And I remember keeping that was in my wallet for like 2 weeks, and it felt like this like security blanket to have this like $50 bill in here. And so I remember this. This was 2010 or 2000, late 2009, and at the time, I also smoked my whole life. I wasn't like chronically overweight, but I would say I was probably about 30 or 40 pounds more than I should be, kind of thing. And my mom and my brother and this friend of ours, there was this Winnipeg's Biggest Loser competition.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the Biggest Loser show. So they were doing a Winnipeg version of that, and they said I was the least, maybe the one that needed to lose weight, but I still could have afforded to lose maybe 30 pounds.
This was after you ended the company and threw in the towel, and you got the $50 in your wallet.
Threw in the towel, yeah, and they wanted to go in this competition, so I did, and so if anyone smokes, and I know a lot of people don't anymore, it's becoming less of a trendy thing to do, but you know how hard it is to smoke when you are going through a hard point in your life. Also, when you're restricting calories, because when you stop
cravings
smoking,
get more?
The cravings get more, right?
Okay.
And I remember one day, so I was at the lowest point, I guess, because when you're not eating as much. I was hardly sleeping. I had just shut down my business. I felt like the lowest point in my life, and I'm laying on my couch, just talking just to God. I just was like, God, what the heck is going on? Like I felt completely like a failure. But I still knew in my mind that I was destined for more. And I remember like clear as day saying to God, I'm going to manage a company with 100 people one day. And I heard back this, I heard God say to me, Jay, how could you ever manage 100 people when you can't even manage yourself? And this was like, I had been trying to quit smoking for 10 years and I couldn't manage myself. I couldn't manage my eating. I was smoking. I was drinking way more than I should. I was kind of out of shape. Like I couldn't even manage myself. And I was like, yeah, God, I'm gonna, and that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And that was the last day I ever smoked a cigarette. And I really kind of got my health back on track.
Let's stay there for a second. Like if you don't like that, because I think I can relate. I think anyone who's pursuing something can relate to what you're talking about at some level. Maybe not as challenging a situation, or maybe more challenging. But here's what I want to know from you: like, what was it that was pulling you or telling you? And it may be desire, maybe it was. Like it could be anything, but like, what was it that made you say, no, I don't need to just go work at Wendy's. Like I actually need to continue. I believe there's something that I'm supposed to be doing, because what you just described, like that's really hard. Like the emotions that you're going through when you're shutting something down that you've put blood, sweat, and tears into, and maybe you or maybe other people, like you believe that it's what you were supposed to be doing, and why didn't this work? Like that's a really low point. Like it's hard, and discouraging is probably a better word, where you're discouraging. Literally, courage is taken from you, right?
Yeah.
When you have courage taken from you, you don't have the ability to move on and be brave. Like that's what discouragement means. Like what made you continue there?
It's a really good question. I have a few theories on it. I was fortunate to play a lot of, so for a couple things. One is I played a lot of sports in my life, and I know that you can lose a game but not be a loser,
Mm-hmm.
and you can
Win a
you
game
know
and not be a winner.
you can true 100%, right? And so I think one thing was, I think I was lucky enough to have those experiences in my life that, had some people never had those experiences, they might get to a point like I had, and they might think about like suicide. They might think
Mm-hmm.
about like something like you feel like an absolute complete failure. And I sadly, I know people, that close friends that lost a lot of money, felt like that was the end for them, and they ended their life because they felt like that's it.
It's horrible. I do know a couple people like that as well. It just happens in this space.
Right. And so, having that as a kid growing up, I think was really, really important. That's why I think, anyone listening right now, like, you know what, be thankful when your kid loses a game, because it is such a great opportunity to teach them about life, like so much more than sport. Like I always, like, sports has nothing to do with the trophy. I actually just the other day, man, it's timely. My mom had 4 boxes that were like, I want to say 4 feet, like they were like big boxes, like legal file cabinet boxes, like 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, and 4 of them full of trophies. They were like up to my chin from the floor all the way up, and like this wide. And they've been in my parents' house forever. And a couple weeks ago, my mom's like, "Hey, what do you want me to do with these trophies?" And I was like, "You could throw them out." But my son was there, and my son just turned 8, and he's playing hockey. But he's like, "What, Dad? No, you can't throw those trophies out. There's no way, absolutely no way." I was like, "Well, what do you want me to do with them?" And I'm like, he's like, "I don't know. Like, well, let's go through them." So I took them from my mom's house. I brought them home. We had a night. We went through every trophy, and I talked about, like, I had like, I was quarterback on our football team. We won the city championships. I told them about that story. I have these these Archer of the Year trophies, Canadian national championship trophies, my volleyball trophies. I got baseball, running, everything. And we talked about each one. And he actually took 2 of them. He's like, "Dad, can I put these on my shelf?" So he's got 2 of these big Archer of the Year trophies in his room right now as we speak. But so we went through, we talked about all these trophies. I put them on the coffee table. They were kind of all over, and we had them out for a couple of days. And then my wife was like, "Okay, Jay, you can't have these trophies out here anymore." I'm like, "Okay,
can't stay out any longer."
Put them in a box, and I drove to the dump, and I threw them all in the dump. And I just thought, like, the value of everything from those trophies has nothing to do with the trophy, and everything to do with like what it did to me as a person, learning about more in life, right? So that's
so good. So just to pause on that for a second, and hopefully we keep our train of thought. But like, one of the reasons that's so good is anyone who's listened to this Devo for a little while, I have this concept of a highlight reel, and it occurred to me. I had my kids start doing this a few years ago, which is you need. When you read, like, especially the Old Testament, you see them going through situations, memorializing those situations, like teaching their kids about those situations, and taking them the learnings and the memories of them forward, so that the next time they're in a situation, they're like, "Oh, we can point back to that thing," right? And so that occurred to me and a few years ago, and I started keeping something myself called a highlight reel, which is just a notepad, which is like where, you know how like we're kind of prone to only taking, like, recognizing or taking note of like the big things that happen in our lives.
Totally.
The truth is like you have to look for the things in your life, like, and so I started to look for the things, like where did I win today? Where did God show up in a big way or a small way? And the purpose of it is to be able to look back when you're discouraged at some point in the future, be able to like read through these things, like, wait, no, remember that time I overcame this. Remember this time, like there was this like miracle that happened. Remember this time, and like you have this asset, and that's what's so cool about what you just did with the trophies is like, one, the practical application is like, yes, those like that's why sports, one of the things, like competition is so valuable at a young age, because you automatically start to accumulate highlight reel assets, whether you lose or win. And then the cool thing is what you did is like you literally went through that and taught your son about it, which is so cool, because that's the goal. It's like you pass it on. Like you can't die with you. Like it's so funny how it just, when you look at like all these stories in like the Old Testament, like they always pass the story on. They never let the story die.
Yeah.
So I just think what you did is so cool. So sorry. Yeah, you can
continue.
Oh,
thanks, man. Thank you. No, it is. When I look back, like I'll keep sharing a little bit on the journey here, but like, you by all rights would say like, well, Bold is a successful company. We've had a ton of success, but like, and the story's not done either, but by no means.
Oh, it's not done. I know.
Looking back, like I would have, like when I started that last business, if I said I want to be like successful when I'm 45, I would have never, ever, ever written that like, okay, I'm going to lose all my money. I'm going to completely fail at this. I'm not going to be able to pay rent. I'm going to struggle here and here. And this is my path to success. Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't success, whatever, but that means. But I think of it like, I think it's crochet. Is it crochet? Or when cross stitch.
Okay.
I think that's what it is. When people take, it's something that looks like it's like the size of a plate, and it's like a cloth material, but they stitch on it, and it's like a beautiful, like in a scene of like a farm or something, or a sunset. Do you know what I think?
It's like there's like a template that you stitch into, right?
You stretch the cloth over, pin it, and then you stitch, and you do this like drawing. And
were you the Canadian state champion?
No, see, I would know what it's called if I was.
I'm just joking.
But I think if what we see, like on one side is this beautiful picture, right?
Yeah.
And that's what God sees. God knows what he's building. What we see is the back. We see all these loose ends of threads that make no sense sometimes. If you showed me the back of a cross stitch piece, it would just be random colors of threads everywhere, and you'd say this makes no sense. And you'd probably get mad, you get angry, and you'd like curse the person making it. Like, what are you doing? This makes no sense at all. But one day you see the other side, and sometimes that's points in life. Like sometimes when you're fortunate enough to be able to look back, you might be 40 and you can look back to when you're 20. You might be 80 and you look back to when you're something like that. That highlight reel when you're 10, you can look back and be like, okay, it makes sense. All those threads, that horrible thing that happened, that business that failed, that hard time I went through, that relationship that ended, that friendship that ended, that person that died, anything, things that don't make any sense at the time. God's painting a picture, but you don't see it yet, right? And so I think things are always happening in our life, and our job isn't to try to see the final picture yet. Just know that a beautiful picture is being made, and it's part of the process. And as long as you always have that trust, sometimes it's messy, and sometimes the stitching is ugly and looks weird. Sometimes you might get a little glimpse of like, oh, I think I see what's being painted here, but we don't know until we see the other side. And I think another thing that really helped me, so I do think, my sport upbringing helped, but also knowing that, I was very lucky to be raised in a house that my parents taught me about, that God would love me no matter what. And it didn't matter. Like there was nothing I could do to win God's love. And I just was built as a beautiful person, and I was amazing and talented and gifted. And my mom is like, my wife always jokes that like, my mom is literally my biggest cheerleader. Like she would show up at sports games with a trumpet. Like she like,
that's awesome.
Tambourines and cymbals, awesome. And like, so I like, I just knew that, that I was built for so much more. And so that even though this, at that time, like when you're in that moment, and if you don't have some of that understanding ahead of time, I can see why people go to a really dark place, because it's very hard to learn, like to develop that mindset when you're at the lowest point of your life, right? Like if you don't think about it ahead of time, like it's like, this is going to sound really, I don't know, not morbid or not, but like I have kids and I've thought about what would happen if my kids died, like something happened. Like I know some people will have say like, I couldn't live. Like I've heard people say like, I don't know, like you'll hear about a kid dying in the news. And then you'll hear someone say like, I couldn't live if my kids died or something, like, you know, and then my mind goes to like, what would happen? Like what? So then I go down this like exercise, this thought exercise of like, well, yeah, I would be devastated. Like it would be horribly devastating. But could I get myself to a point where, you know, I could be thankful for the time I had with them? And could I be thankful for the gifts that they brought, even during the time that they were on earth? Like who's to say we're supposed to get 100 years? Like who's to say there's no guarantee on anything, you know? And I think thinking about some of these things ahead of time, at least a bit ahead of time, and I hope I don't have to go through it or 100 hard things, right? But to have a little bit of that ahead of time, so when you're in it, you at least have some. And it's like you know, we avoid everything. So I think that having some of those skills prior to being in that moment was super helpful.
No, that's so important. I mean, I can relate, man. I do similar exercise. I've done that kind of thought exercise a little bit, and I'm probably going to do it with a little more intention after talking with you, because we've talked about our kids before, like you and I, and I enjoy my kids so much. Like, I coach all of them in soccer. I'm a championship winning soccer coach multiple times. I'm proud to say. I get most of my business principles from coaching soccer, which is funny. But I just enjoy them so much to the point where, like that's a scary thought. And, and that's the case with, you could say, with your business or with your, because a lot of people call their business their baby, right? Like, funny how that relates. Or any one thing. And I'll just share a little bit. Like right now, God's teaching me something that I don't even know what he's teaching me for, but like there's some challenges in my life that I'm going through. There's some changes in our business. And then I was sharing with Jay, this was last week, and I think I may have actually shared it on the last episode of the Biz Devo, but I woke up on New Year's Day and I couldn't walk. I had this like massive pain on my left side. And it turns out it's a sciatic nerve thing. It still hasn't gone away. It's the 20th of January when we're recording this, and that was like January 1st. And of all the things going on in my life, I realized like the one thing, if I had, and if I'm being completely honest with you, it's like I never thought I couldn't depend on my body, because I spend a lot of time like in fitness and nutrition, and I like feeling strong, and like that's just a thing that not only do I like doing, but I also kind of take pride in or rely on is probably a better word. And that like got taken away from me. Like I couldn't walk. I still I can't run right now. And what's interesting is you can get into these situations where you feel like, what do you like, God, maybe you do or don't have a relationship with God. I'm going to assume you do. Like if you're listening to this, like what are you possibly doing? Like I need to, like there's all these other challenges, and now you've taken away my ability to physically apply like my strength to those things. Yeah. Like what could you possibly be doing? And what's interesting is I don't know, but what I do know is, you always read in all these stories throughout the Bible, and I've experienced this in my life, is that like what God's doing is making you reliant on him. And I grew up with a perception. I would say this is most people's perception, where that's like that sounds like you're poor and needy and you have no ability of your own, and you just have to rely on God to like have some saint bring your breakfast to you, in the morning or something. I don't believe that that's necessarily the case. Maybe that is. But I actually think that two things, and then I want to get back to Jay's story. But two things. One is like, if you don't have the ability to rely on him for big things, I don't think you can do big things. So you have to learn that, right? So that has to be taught. So like anyone who's ever done anything great that I've ever seen has this amazing ability, whether they believe it, whether they realize it or not, to like actually shift the responsibility and get their power from something greater. And they may not even realize that that's a spiritual side of them, but that's what it is. So that's one thing. And the second thing about that is I have this distinct thought throughout at least my current experience, is that it wouldn't be a great story if there wasn't like a great dip. So that those things, I think, start to give you hope, and maybe even hopefully give some context as to maybe why you have those struggles. There's probably 100 other takeaways from having struggles but yeah.
I think I love it. I love it. I think you're getting an opportunity to build your testimony. And I've said this sometimes to a few people, and then started saying it to myself. Like when you're going through a hard time, it's like, what do you want the story to be? And it's easy when you're going through easy times. It's easy when you're in the good times or the good days or whatever you want to call it. But the hard times is what defines you. Like, no one stands at someone's funeral and talks about like what they were like on their greatest days. They talk about like what they were like on the hardest times of their life and the hardest days and during the hard times. And that is like that those are defining moments. So like, you are getting a chance to define who you are. I actually think you don't define who you are really when things are really easy and really good. Like, it's truly defining. They always say, like, you don't know who you are until you're tested. You don't know who you are until you go through a hard time. You don't know who you are until you fail at something. You don't know who you are till like you're really pressure tested. You put 10 people in an airplane that starts heading down or something, and you'll see some people put their head down and scream, and some people see who needs help, or like, it's a defining moment. And I think it's an amazing opportunity. Like, I always grew up like at Bible camp. I remember, like, your counselor would share their testimony or something. It would be like each day of the week, someone would be like share their testimony about like how I learned about God and this hard thing. But it's not a joke. It's actually like, if you look back at all of them, man, it's always through some hard point. It's never like, no one ever gets up and shares their testimony and says like, well, things have just always been good, and read the Bible when I was a kid, and that's it. Like, no,
it's not interesting at the very least.
It's not. And so, yeah, I think it is an amazing opportunity to build a testimony that then you either can share or people see. Like, people are watching and listening. People are very bad listeners, but they're very good watchers. And when we're going through things, like how we act and how we carry ourselves is so influential on people. And if you don't go through anything like that, you don't have the opportunity. Like, I always like say, like, I want my kids to see me struggle at stuff. I want them to see me have a hard time at something. And the balance is, I don't want to overdo it. Like, sometimes like I'll catch myself saying, like, I don't know, like if we are like ordering dinner, I'm like, well, I got to be careful of make sure we can afford it or something. I don't know. Like, if they're ordering, so like, do we need the ice cream? But like, no, that's like going too far. But like, if I'm like legitimately having a hard day, like, or at dinner, I'll say like, I had a really hard day today, or this thing was really hard, or we lost this big client or something. Like, I think it's really important for them to see that. and to see me work through it, and to see me rely on God for help, and to see, like, that's how they learn, right? Like, and
Yes.
so these moments, I mentioned this kind of thought picture last time we chatted, but like I this really helps me, is there's peaks and there's valleys in life.
Yeah.
And picture a mountain peak right now, like, what's growing on it? Nothing. It's bare.
Nothing.
There's nothing up there. It's usually covered in snow, and you don't want to be up there. What's in the valley? It's lush, it's green. That's where stuff grows. And when you're in the valley, see it for what it is. It might be hard, but you're growing, and you're growing, whether you know it or not. And just know that valleys don't last forever. But that's where your growth happens, right? And God will, you'll end up coming out of it. You'll go up the mountain, and you'll need more growth in your life, and you'll come back down. And life is just peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. Grow in the valley, and each time your peak will be a little bit higher. Grow in the valley, but don't rush through those valleys, right? Like, so I think the way you're thinking about it with the pain you're going through with your back is like, what can I learn from this? Maybe you were, and I'm probably very similar to you, like very reliant on health and fitness, and maybe that was maybe too much of a reliance, or too, but
no doubt,
you're in that,
no doubt,
you're in that growth stage right now, right? And so, like, you're smart for seeing it for what it is.
No choice.
Yeah, I guess so.
No. It is a choice. I'm joking. Like, you can either decide that it's just painful, and which is a lot of society does that. But like, I do think that anyone, whether you have a faith background or not, like, if you feel like called to something, you're going to want to grow and figure out, okay, and how can I learn from this thing that's happening? And so we could go for hours, and we'll go for, hopefully you got a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Because I want to know that just transition from, like, and you said something to me, I'll let you say it, but last time we spoke about how that lowest point births something. So, like, take us through from, like, where you were like, you said you had like $50 in your pocket, and you were at the lowest point, and from there on.
So I knew, because of everything we talked about already, that this was a stage of my life. And I knew this was not the end. This is not who I am. And this goes for also being successful. Like, there's a lot of times people say, wow, Bold's doing great. I'm like, yeah, you know what? We got lucky in a lot of ways. Timing was really good. We started building apps for Shopify when it was early. There is no such thing as a self-made success. It is so many other factors around you, right? So, like, there's no such thing as a self-made failure either. And so, like, you can't totally own either. Like, it's not, so knowing that, I started, I knew there was more. And so I had never written a resume in my life.
What did you want? Like, were there feelings that you were like, and they may be anything, like you might provide for your family or whatever, but what was, like, some of the things that made you, the emotions that were the positive emotions that were, like, driving you forward? Yeah.
So the reason that the online stores, I could have, like, maybe saved them, is they, like we talked about the shipping challenges and other extra costs. I kept trying to convince the manufacturers to ship directly to customers, but they wouldn't, because that's called drop shipping. For those that don't know. Yeah. And so, like, I wanted to be up in Canada, and the person manufacturing the product would ship to the customer, and I would ask them to do that, and they would say, well, you just want to live up there, sell the product, and we ship it to your customer. That doesn't sound legit. And it's, of course, very legit. Almost everything you order right now is not shipped from the person. It's shipped from a manufacturer somewhere. But at the time, it wasn't as common, and they didn't want to do it. And so, I ended up shutting everything down. And then after about a month, one of the biggest distributors in the US messaged me and said, "Hey Jay, we'll try this drop shipping thing now where we ship to your customers, and we figured out a way how to do it." And I was like, "Well, you guys, like I shut everything down. Like there's no more website. I can't even process a credit card." But so I thought about that for a little while, and I just had so much like conviction that I could do it again, but do it now like without the cost of like the shipping. And I thought I could do it. So I convinced my wife to open a new company, a brand new numbered company, and it was in her name. And we got a credit card processing merchant account under that new business name. And I woke up, we didn't have kids yet. So I woke up every morning, literally at like 4:30 in the morning. And I rebuilt the entire site. And it took like months, but I at the time heard about this new platform called Shopify. And so I was like, oh, I'll try it on this one this time. It's because my other one was on a completely different e-commerce platform. And so I rebuilt it on Shopify. And one of the things that I was really good at was SEO, which is search engine optimization. For those listening, is I just naturally got really good at it. And so during the time, I still to this day, I always joke, I've never written a resume in my life, but my wife said like, "Okay, Jay, we got to make money somehow." So she found this software company in Winnipeg that was looking for an SEO specialist. And I had a whole bunch of screenshots of my website, and I sent like 30 screenshots of a search for a product and my site's ranking and the manufacturer's ranking. So it's like, imagine you search for Air Jordans and like there's your store and then there's Nike, or you search for a Patagonia shirt and there's your listing and there's Patagonia. Yeah. So I said, this isn't a resume, but here's 30 screenshots of search results from a site I manage and the rankings. And they emailed back like right away and they said, "When can you start?" Like, okay. So I started doing SEO for this company, which, again, going back to that cross stitch thing, like the picture was being painted. I didn't know it, but I had learned about Shopify, became really good at SEO. And then Shopify, while I'm building this new store on Shopify, discovered they had this app platform, which was the first e-commerce company that had this concept of an app store. And I had a ton of e-commerce experience, so I knew what apps would be successful. And you can see it's like, whoa, that's like a perfect story, like in hindsight, but I would have never, ever,
like the orchestration, you could have never done it yourself.
No, absolutely not. And so I kept building this new store on Shopify in the mornings and evenings and was drop shipping. Like it started from scratch. So I had like 0 customers. So I had to like remarket it and start getting it ranking in Google search results. And eventually like one day, like made a sale. They made a couple sales. But the nice thing about this store was it was 100% profit. Like if I sold something for $100 and I made $20, like that was $20 in my pocket. I didn't have to drive down to a warehouse across the border and pay for a warehouse and pay for a truck and a trailer and duty and customs and brokerage and all of that stuff. I didn't have to do any of that. I could like make the $20. That was the beauty of shipping directly to the customer from the manufacturer. And so I was doing that. And then at the same time, working at this SEO place, and then saw the opportunity in the app store. And I was like, I want to build some apps. And like, fast forward through some of this, but like I was like every day, like listening to like every SEO podcast I could. I learned that inside out. I kept going on building the store, but like I never stopped believing in myself. I never stopped thinking that like I can't do something amazing. I just knew that like this wasn't the path. And
I was
like,
going to say you had the belief, like that the belief didn't die when you were at your lowest point. You're like, there's something more. I believe. That's why you didn't get a job and throw it all in and just do something else and just say like, this whole entrepreneurship thing is not for me.
If a door closes in your life, just be really observant of what other doors are opening. And so many times we cover our eyes and all we can think about is the door that closed, whether that's a relationship that ended or something that happens in your life. There's always. It's got to be like
Yeah.
one of those laws of nature.
It's like
or
a
something.
principle of the universe.
It's a principle of the universe. Like
No
if
doubt.
something closes, something opens. Like it's like, like all energy is equal.
Mm-hmm.
Or that energy is not
Polarity.
created or lost, right? Like
Yes.
there's like maybe there's something to do with that. But I think or it's just the beautiful way that God created this universe. It's there's when a door closes, something opens, but just you have to look. It's not right in front of your face.
That's
right?
the thing. You've got to
Like-
be looking and willing to. And sometimes those doors are like, they're so small when like that you might miss them. They may not be, but they may not be obvious. That's probably a better word to put it. Like, so you really have to be aware and looking.
Yeah. And to me, that's the definition of being an entrepreneur. Is there's almost no successful entrepreneur I can think of. I'm trying to, I don't even know if I can, but like that has had a straight path.
Right.
It's always been some failure. Always. Like it's part of like the journey. Like it's almost required. Like it's
probably, yeah. And it's probably because like what you said, you wouldn't have built Bold the way you built it if you hadn't had that failure and the experience. You may not have built Bold at all.
Bold wouldn't exist. I can say that 100% without doubt. Like
and like just sit on that for a second, like because Bold has impacted, you said almost 1 million stores,
just over
right?
800,000, yeah.
And probably many, many times more people, like with regard to like the owners of those stores, the employees, the customers that they serve. And then your family, I know your founders' families and all the people that work for you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like it's been financially very successful as well, I'm guessing, right? So like it's given you resource, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other people too, because you've got investors now and you've got all kinds of things that would have never happened. Sorry. Yeah, I'll let you
No,
that.
You are bang on. And it's 100 times more than I remember on that couch. I just said, God, I just want to, one day I'm going to manage 100 people. And that was it. That was as big as my little brain could think.
Yes.
And I never thought, we've raised close to 60 million, multiple times from investors. And we've like by all definition of like material success, like I think we've achieved a lot of that. We've impacted a lot of lives. We've had close to 1 million merchants have used our products. We've impacted, like through other ways, like through podcasts and through our, like by all measures, like, but, and it's, I wouldn't have,
no,
it's
in
not
the
what
e-commerce
I foresaw.
world, Bold has high influence. Like it's up there with Shopify and like that level of influence. And what you said was really interesting because I think I know I can relate to this a lot of times, and I know anyone listening is like, you don't know what you don't know, and you just can't see. Like your little brain, right? Your little mind. Not you have a big brain. That little mind at the time, right? Couldn't even imagine anything as big as what it is right now. And that sounds. I just want to like say to everyone listening, like that sounds so cliche what I just said, but like you got to sit on it for a second. Like it's not like it's bigger than your imagination, like cliche, like personal development stuff. But like in all seriousness, when you're in these situations where you're like, I can't see a way where this could work or a way out or how this could work if I don't do this thing. Like the reality is your story is one of the examples of how it just is. Like you just can't see it. And so what do you do then? Like I believe you just keep doing what you know to do and you keep trusting. But maybe you have some additional thoughts there.
And listening, trust. I mean, if you think about everything great that in the Bible, like they're kind of all upside down stories. There's no, like you take a guy like Moses that could hardly speak. You take someone that was killing Christians and you use that person to become one of the greatest people who spread like the New Testament, like when Saul was like even Jesus himself, I often, like, I tell my kids, like, sometimes I say, like, you know, if I was making up the Bible, I would have made Jesus come in on, like, riding on flames,
Right.
when, like, come
Yes.
in on, like, a
Harley.
cart from the sky. Yeah. And like everyone on the earth would hear him.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been, like, born in a barn, and he wouldn't have been, like, from, like, he would have come through, like, the Jewish line, and he would have been like he would have been like a son of a Pharisee, or he would have been like, and, you know, like, when he died and then he was in the tomb, like, I wouldn't have had, like, back then, like, women weren't respected as much as they are now. I wouldn't have, if I wanted my story to be believed, I wouldn't have had women find him. I would have had a noble man find him, so that it was trustworthy. Like, there's nothing about Jesus's story that makes any sense. So, like, if someone ever said, like, oh, you believe that far-fetched story? I'm like, who would make this up? Like, it makes absolutely no sense. Like, if you wanted to trick people, you wouldn't have said, you would do it 100% differently. Like, if you wanted to, like, it makes no sense. It's completely every single step of it is backwards. Like, Jesus washing other people's feet, hanging out with prostitutes, going to, like, the bars with tax collectors, and, like, no, you wouldn't, like, none of that makes sense. So, like, every single thing is backwards. Like, not one thing is like, yep, oh yeah, here's the playbook on how to get people to believe a false religion. Like, not one of them is the story of Jesus. Like,
and they're all these underdog stories, like you said. Like, I mean, like, one of my favorite stories is Abraham, where it's like, he's like, dude, he's old, and his wife's old, and he's got 0 kids and hasn't been able to have kids. And he's like, God tells him, and when I hear God tells him, it's like, I think it's the way you have a feeling about the thing that you want, that God's calling you to do, or that you feel like you should do. It's like, you're gonna be the father of many nations, and you're gonna look at all this, like, all these stars, and you're gonna have many more kids than this. And you're like, wait, I'm like, I think he was like 80 years old or something like that, and 0 kids, and haven't been able to have kids, and then you're gonna give me 1, and that makes no sense at all. But he believed in it, and he was bold enough to believe in it. I actually think that ambition, like, that a lot of people get shunned for, in like faith communities, is actually that boldness that's required. And I think entrepreneurs and people like yourself have to have courage enough to actually believe in it and do it.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, if Abraham can believe that, and if they can go through, then how can we not believe and trust God when we have our little setbacks and our little failures, you know? And also, I think, to know that, like, you have to really believe that God, that you're here for a reason, and you're here for a purpose, and you're here to do big things. Like, I don't think anyone listening to this podcast, well, first of all, hopefully you're all still here, but for those listening, you are here for a reason, because it's not, God didn't make people to be small and uninfluential and little. Like, that is not our purpose. Is to do big things. And I think, you know, for me personally, growing up, I was always not the one to, we all have different skill sets, but, like, I wasn't always the one to want to, like, do, how do I put this? Like, volunteer every day at the soup kitchen and do things like this. Like, my heart, I was really called, like, from when I was 13 years old, I was literally behind the counter of our store every day, selling to, like, adults. And, like, I ran that store when I was 15. Like, I just love business. And sometimes I would hear someone say, like, well, you're just chasing money, or you're chasing that. And to be honest, that actually didn't really ever cross my mind. I just, like, I loved strategizing with my dad. We would read books on retail and read books on stuff. And, like, we would, cause I was a kid, we'd drive me to the store and then drive me home. And we would talk on the way home about, like, hey, what do you think about, like, if we, started this type of lesson, or we started doing birthday parties for archery, or what do you think if we did, like, this weekly, club, or we do this thing? I don't know. Like we would just strategize about it. And I just loved I loved doing that kind of stuff like that. Those were some of my favorite memories, is like just the strategy of it, and you do things right, the money comes, but we were never, ever trying to chase money. In fact, we often didn't make a lot of money, but
no. And the truth is that what you just said, and it's probably a good place to wrap up, is like, it's, I think it's happening less now, but what you just described, where it's like, wait, you're not in the soup kitchen, or you're not helping on Sunday morning, or you're not teaching a class or something like that. Like, I think that's getting less and less now, but I think that still exists, is where like, if you're not doing those things, it seems like you're not doing God's work. And the truth is that like, you're called to do something, and if you're aware of that, if you're seeking that, if you're looking for that and you're doing it, like, I believe the seed of those callings are just desires. Like, you had this desire to build a business. You enjoyed being creative with your dad, and like thinking of marketing campaigns and strategies and all these different things. And you followed that, and you listened, and you created something, and you didn't give up, and you still believed, and you didn't lose hope, and all these different things, right? And now you're impacting so many people across the globe. And that's the case with so many entrepreneurs. And what I want to make sure is really clear, because I believe, this is just my belief. Again, I'm not a pastor. Like, my belief is that what a great strategy of the devil, if I were trying to fight this battle, like, what a great strategy to make people, like God's people, think that pursuing big things and having resource and wanting to do bold things is a bad thing. Like, what a great strategy about it would be to make them think that that's not really working for God, or working with God, or ministering, or doing anything like that. Like, that's not that. Like, that's all worldly desire, and it's bad. Like, what a great strategy to make those people, God's people, think that, so that like anyone who doesn't believe it has all the resource, and God's people have no resource. That's not how it's set up. That's not anything that I've ever read in the Bible. Like, most of the time you see God giving resource to his people, not taking it away and giving it to other people, unless it's a punishment for sin and a teaching lesson. But the truth is like, those feelings are good feelings.
Yeah.
We need more good people in higher level leadership positions, like yourself, Jay, and in the general marketplace, right? Like, not that it's bad, like great church leaders, not just church leaders, like everywhere. More good people in higher level leadership and influential positions. That's better for our world. So I want to encourage everyone who's listening to this, because it's so important to fight any of those horrible, like I would call them demonic thoughts, that stuff is bad and it's all selfish, because it's not.
Well, it's we need people everywhere. Like Jesus said, we need to be in the world, but not of it. Like, we need good people who are top of the charts on the music charts. We need actors who are like not just acting in Christian movies and not just singing on Christian radio stations. Like, be in the world and let your light shine wherever you are. And if that's in the business world, like not just in a small selling cross necklaces, like do what you're selling, but in the world. And so people, and that's where your light needs to shine. And no, I agree 100%. And I feel like that's hopefully mine shines a little bit at Bold. And I feel that that's for us entrepreneurs and those people listening who consider themselves in that category, like remove any doubt or questioning that you might have that like success is not for you, because it is. Like, God wants it for you. Never lose sight of what's important and keeping God the center. But God does not want you to be a crippled little struggling to get by person. Like, there's just that is not why.
It's not a good strategy.
No.
Well, Jay, you absolutely are. Like I said, you are such an encouragement. When I say encouragement, again, I don't use the cliche. Like, I use it in the true definition of encouragement, whereas you give courage to others. And I know that from the people that you lead. And I know that from our friendship, like in talking with you, and just always, it's always so awesome to talk with you. Hopefully everyone listening to this felt what I feel when I talk to you. And I think your story is amazing. So I just appreciate you. I hope you continue doing what you're doing at like just such a high level. I know you are.
Thank you.
So for anyone who wants to find out more about you or anything else that you do, like just so you know, like y'all listen to this, you might be in business in various capacities. Jay is an expert in subscriptions among other things. Like, so MRR, which is like one of the golden things that you run after with business. Jay's one of the experts there because he's helped build some of the biggest subscription businesses in the world. But anyway, Jay, if anyone wants to find out about you or anything you want them to find about it, whether bold or something else, like where can they do that?
Well, thank you for the kind words, Ken. Man,
I mean it, man.
I feel like $1 million right now. That's boldcommerce.com is our site. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's a good place to connect with me. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to anything. It doesn't have to be related to Bold, but anything we talked about today, I can't remember if it's under Jay or Jason Myers on LinkedIn. I always go by Jay, but search both.
Usually it's Jay Myers.
Jay.
Yes.
It's funny because, my legal name is Jason, but everyone always calls me Jay.
Yeah, you've got me with that a few times too, myself.
Yeah. And someone's like, what, are you not? I couldn't find you. I looked on LinkedIn for you. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh yeah. So I changed all my social properties to Jay so people can find me now. So
awesome. So please go, go learn more about Jay, connect with him. And Jay, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Oh, so much. My pleasure, Ken. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. And never stop growing.